Growing up in the old Victorian house my family had inherited was like living in a time capsule. The house, with its grand, albeit dilapidated, facade and creaky floors, was a testament to our ancestry. Passed down through generations, it was filled with antique furniture, dusty books, and forgotten treasures that told the story of our lineage. My sister, Lily, and I spent countless hours exploring every nook and cranny of the house, particularly the attic, which was our favorite haunt. It was a gloomy, rainy afternoon when we decided to venture into the attic again. The rain pattered against the roof, creating a rhythm that was both soothing and eerie. The attic was a treasure trove of old furniture, trunks, and knickknacks that had been stored away by our ancestors. On this particular day, we stumbled upon a large, ornate trunk that we had somehow overlooked during our previous explorations. As we pried open the heavy lid, a cloud of dust billowed out, causing us to cough and wave our hands to clear the air. Inside the trunk were various items: old clothes, faded photographs, and a collection of porcelain dolls. One doll, in particular, caught Lily's eye. It was dressed in a faded blue dress, its glass eyes staring up at us with an unsettling, lifelike quality. Despite the dust and the years, the doll looked almost pristine, as if it had been waiting for someone to find it. Lily, who had always been fascinated by dolls, was immediately captivated. She carefully lifted the doll out of the trunk, cradling it as if it were a real baby. "I'll name her Emily," she declared, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I looked at the doll's expressionless face. There was something about Emily that made me uneasy, but I didn't want to dampen Lily's enthusiasm. From the moment Emily entered our lives, strange things began to happen. At first, they were small, almost unnoticeable occurrences. Objects would move on their own, lights would flicker, and we would hear faint giggling coming from empty rooms. We tried to brush it off as our imaginations running wild, but the incidents became more frequent and unsettling. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard Lily talking in her room. Curious, I peeked in to see her sitting on the floor with Emily, having what appeared to be a one-sided conversation. Lily seemed completely engrossed, as if she were talking to a real person. I asked her who she was talking to, and she simply replied, "Emily." Concerned, I told my parents about Lily's behavior, but they brushed it off as normal childhood imagination. However, things took a darker turn when Lily began having nightmares. She would wake up screaming, saying that Emily was trying to hurt her. My parents were worried, but still skeptical about the doll being the cause. The nightmares became a nightly occurrence, and Lily's fear of Emily grew. She would often wake up drenched in sweat, her eyes wide with terror, as she described how Emily would come to life and torment her in her dreams. My parents, though concerned, tried to reassure her that it was all in her imagination, but I knew there was something more to it. I could feel it too, the cold, unsettling presence that seemed to linger around the doll. One evening, while my parents were out, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I took Emily and placed her back in the attic, hoping that putting some distance between the doll and Lily would help. As I was leaving the attic, I felt a cold breeze and heard a whisper that sent chills down my spine. "You can't get rid of me." Terrified, I ran back to my room and locked the door. That night, I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with fear. Suddenly, I heard footsteps outside my door, followed by a soft tapping. I mustered the courage to open the door, and there, sitting in the hallway, was Emily. I screamed and threw the doll down the stairs. When my parents came home, they found me sobbing and holding Lily, who was also crying. We told them everything, and they finally believed us. The next day, my father took Emily and threw her into the river. We thought that was the end of it, but we were wrong. The disturbances stopped for a while, and Lily's nightmares faded away. We tried to move on, but the memory of those dark days lingered. Years passed, and Lily and I grew up and moved out of the old house. We both went to college in different cities, trying to put the past behind us. However, the memory of Emily never truly left us. We often spoke about those days, wondering if it had all been a figment of our imagination, or if there was something more sinister at play. One summer, I decided to visit my parents. They had been living alone in the old house, and I missed them terribly. It was a nostalgic trip down memory lane as I drove through the familiar streets and finally arrived at the house. My parents welcomed me with open arms, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. That evening, as we were having dinner, my mother mentioned something strange. "I've been hearing noises again," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Footsteps, whispers. It's like those days when you and Lily were kids." My heart sank. "Have you seen anything?" I asked, fearing the worst. She shook her head. "No, but I can feel it, the same cold, unsettling presence." I decided to investigate. That night, after my parents had gone to bed, I wandered through the house, flashlight in hand. The house was eerily silent, the only sound being the creak of the floorboards under my feet. I made my way to the attic, the place where it had all begun. The attic was just as I remembered it, dusty, cluttered, and filled with forgotten treasures. I searched through the trunks and boxes, half expecting to find Emily sitting there, waiting for me, but she was nowhere to be found. Relieved, I turned to leave when I heard a faint giggle. My blood ran cold as I spun around, shining my flashlight in every direction. The giggle came again, this time closer. I backed away, my heart pounding in my chest, and tripped over a box, falling to the floor. As I scrambled to my feet, I saw her. Emily was standing in the corner, her glass eyes gleaming in the darkness. She looked just as she had all those years ago, but her expression was different. There was a sinister smile on her face, and her eyes seemed to follow my every move. I ran out of the attic, slamming the door behind me. My parents were already awake, drawn by my screams. I told them what I had seen, and they looked at me with a mix of fear and disbelief. "We need to get rid of her," my father said, his voice steady, "once and for all." The next day we called a local priest to bless the house. He arrived with holy water and a solemn expression, ready to cleanse our home of the evil that had taken root. As he walked through the house, chanting prayers and sprinkling holy water, I felt a sense of hope. Maybe this would finally put an end to the nightmare. We led the priest to the attic, where he performed a more intense ritual. The air grew colder, and the whispers turned into anguished cries. Emily's presence was palpable, and I could feel her anger and desperation. The priest's voice grew louder, commanding the spirit to leave. Suddenly, the attic door slammed shut, and the temperature dropped even further. The priest continued his prayers, his voice unwavering. There was a loud crash, and Emily appeared, her eyes blazing with fury. For a moment, I thought the priest might falter, but he stood his ground, raising the crucifix and shouting, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I command you to leave this place." Emily let out a piercing scream, and the attic was filled with a blinding light. When the light faded, she was gone. The oppressive presence lifted, and the attic felt lighter, almost peaceful. The priest assured us that the spirit had been banished and that we could now live in peace. My parents and I thanked him profusely, feeling a weight lifted from our shoulders. We spent the rest of the day cleaning the attic, disposing of anything that might have held a connection to Emily. Life slowly returned to normal. The house was quiet, and the sense of dread that had lingered for so long was gone. My parents were happier, and I felt a renewed sense of peace. Lily visited a few weeks later, and we shared our experiences, relieved that the nightmare was finally over. However, as time went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that Emily wasn't truly gone. The attic was always at the back of my mind, and I avoided going up there unless absolutely necessary. I tried to convince myself that it was just lingering fear, but deep down I knew there was something more. One night, I had a vivid dream. I was back in the attic, surrounded by the old furniture and trunks. Emily was there, standing in the corner, her eyes filled with sadness. She reached out to me, whispering, "Help me." I woke up in a cold sweat, the dream fresh in my mind. The feeling of dread was back, stronger than ever. I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. I needed to find out the truth about Emily and why she continued to haunt us. I started by researching the history of the house and the doll. I discovered that the original owners of the house, the Hastings family, had a daughter named Emily. She had died tragically at a young age, and her parents, in their grief, had commissioned a doll in her likeness. The doll had been passed down through generations, eventually ending up in our attic. Armed with this new information, I decided to contact a paranormal investigator. I found one named Claire, who came highly recommended. She arrived with a team of specialists and a variety of equipment designed to detect and communicate with spirits. As Claire and her team set up their equipment in the attic, the atmosphere grew tense. The air was thick with anticipation and fear. Claire explained that we would try to communicate with Emily's spirit and find out what she needed to move on. We gathered in a circle, and Claire began to speak softly, calling out to Emily. "Emily, if you can hear us, we're here to help you. Please give us a sign." At first, there was nothing but silence. Then the temperature in the room dropped, and the equipment began to beep and flash. Claire's voice remained steady as she continued to address Emily. "Emily, we know you're here. Please tell us what you need." The room grew colder, and I felt a presence close to me. Suddenly, the doll, which had been placed in the center of the circle, began to move. It turned its head slowly, its glass eyes fixing on me. I felt a surge of fear, but forced myself to stay calm. Claire asked again, "Emily, what do you need to find peace?" A soft, childlike voice filled the room, coming from the doll. "Help me find my parents." Tears filled my eyes as I realized the depth of Emily's sorrow. She was lost and alone, searching for the comfort of her parents, who had long since passed away. Claire nodded, understanding what needed to be done. "We will help you, Emily," she said gently. "We will help you find your parents." Claire suggested we perform a ceremony to guide Emily's spirit to the other side, where she could be reunited with her loved ones. We prepared a small altar with candles, photographs of the Hastings family, and personal items that had belonged to Emily. As we lit the candles and began the ceremony, the atmosphere in the attic changed. The coldness dissipated, replaced by a feeling of warmth and comfort. Claire spoke soothing words, assuring Emily that she would soon be with her parents. The doll began to glow softly, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Emily's presence, once filled with anger and sadness, now felt gentle and loving. The glow intensified, and for a moment, I could see the faint outlines of a young girl and her parents embracing each other. Tears streamed down my face as I watched the family reunited. The glow slowly faded, and the room returned to normal. The oppressive presence was gone, replaced by a feeling of serenity. Claire smiled at me, her eyes filled with kindness. "Emily has found her peace," she said softly. "She's with her parents now." I thanked Claire and her team for their help, feeling a profound sense of relief. The nightmare was finally over, and Emily's spirit was at rest. In the days that followed, the house felt lighter and more welcoming. The sense of dread that had haunted us for so long was gone. My parents were happier, and Lily and I felt a renewed connection to our family's history.